Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to DigiPride, a Juneteenth event and special hosted by Gayming Magazine and Black Girl Gamers. Who am I, you may be asking? My name is TakeMeToChurch, but today you guys can call me Church. This Juneteenth panel is part of Gayming Magazine's annual DigiPride celebrations. This year, DigiPride is presented by JAMA Games and sponsored by Devolver Digital and Wizards of the Coast. To find out what's been happening and is still to come, head over to gamingmag.com/digipride. All right, ladies, it's time to introduce yourselves and say hello to the beautiful audience that we have here today. It's my pleasure to welcome in Dayloh, her, and Zest. How are we feeling today? How are we feeling?
Hello.
Great,
All
great.
right. Well, of course, there are introductions to be had. It would be a pleasure to introduce everybody here, but I'm going to sit back and relax for a moment and let Dayloh take it off for us.
Yeah, so my name is Dayloh, but people do call me Day. I stream on Twitch. I also stream on Black Girl Gamers Twitch page as well every Saturday. On other side, I make neon lights, and I also make a bunch of street signs as well that I'm going to start. So I do a lot of designing with electrical work. And I am studying for my master's, so I have a lot on my plate right now, but overall, I do love making people laugh. I like anime. I love venturing outdoors as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Beautiful. We're going to dive into that conversation at some point about those electronics there. And I can see a beautiful one right behind you. For those that
Yes.
don't know, Dayloh has been absolutely killing it in the scene and making a name for herself in the process. Zest, how you doing?
Hey.
Go
Hi,
ahead, go ahead.
everybody. My name is Zest, or LilZesst, if you want my full name. I'm a content creator and streamer here on Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I'm a makeup enthusiast, so if you ever see my Twitch streams, I'm usually doing my makeup. We play a lot of games together. We play spooky games. We play indie games. We play demos, whatever. I'll try anything once. So I'll play any game if you put it in front of me. And yeah, I just generally like to create a family like vibe with my viewers and my friends. Yeah, that's
Beautiful. We always love good vibes. That's the energy I want to have today with you guys. Okay. Just keep it mellow, relax and just enjoy the ride. Her, it's time.
Hello, everyone. I am Hermaphrodita. Um, you can call me her. I am from Colombia. I'm a drag queen here on Twitch and actually in real life too. And most of my content is about makeup, creating makeup, and teaching people about women in drag, playing a bunch of games randomly. But most of the time is makeup, manga, anime, and everything in between.
Amazing. I love myself a good, manga or two. As you can see, a couple of decorations behind me. Big
Yep.
Naruto fan. A little bit of the Anbu Black Ops right there. But listen, today's conversations are important, and the voices being heard today have a lot of experience on the topic. In the gaming space, there has been a decent increase in focus towards the LGBTQIA plus community and representation of their such, and increased acknowledgement of intersectionality, whether it be grassroots driven or company directed. Today, we'll be discussing the importance in showcasing diversity in gaming spaces, specifically towards the Black LGBTQIA plus community. All right, so to start us off, let's talk about it. What are some of the best examples of Black LGBTQIA plus representation in games that you have seen or played? And of course, anybody can take this away to start us off.
Well, to start, I'm a shooter. I love playing shooters. So
Oh
for
yeah.
me, games like Apex and Valorant, I think they've done a great job with LGBTQIA representation. Personally, some of my favorite characters are queer in those games. So like Bangalore or in Valorant, there's Raze. Like I think they've done a great job with that representation. I think Overwatch as well. They've done a good job. And there's some other games here and there, Baldur's Gate, games like that that I
Mm-hmm.
also enjoy.
Mhm. Mhm. I think Fortnite too. Fortnite has done a good representation so far as well. You see a lot of different designs and different hairstyles as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that has great representation. So there's a lot coming in with that too.
I would say for me, I can think of The Last of Us. It's especially like the DLC part. If you haven't played the game, sorry for the spoilers, but in the DLC part, the character, basically Ellie's girlfriend, being a black girl and being into Ellie and stuff is one of those characters that I was kind of surprised because you barely ever see black character being like fully queer. It's always like the hint is there, but you never know exactly like openly. So it was one of the first ones that I would say impressed me, and it always like stick with me, and that's why I would call it like the best representation in my case.
Completely understandable. And to dive more into that shooter realm, just because that is something that I am very much fixated on, I do have to commend those games that have been mentioned. There's a lot of representation shown, um, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But also hiring those that are a part of those communities and making sure that they're involved in the process is very essential. And I think the companies are doing a better job of that. But we'll discuss later on how we think that those things can maybe improve along the lines. In which areas is representation lacking or problematic? We're actually going right there right now.
Just
That's
this,
all.
oh,
Go ahead.
um, just I guess some of the things that I kind of saw that were a little, I guess, like, I wouldn't say like super problematic, but just small things like when it comes to like character customization, a lot of games like they try their best, I feel like with representation, but sometimes they kind of get a little too I think focused on like there's some games they focus a little too much, I think, on like genitalia, things like that, or like tying the voices to like specific genders. If you want to play like, the gender that matches you most, but you want to choose a different voice that's more like your own, like sometimes that kind of you can't do those things.
Very
So I
true.
think sometimes that character customization can, again, it can be a great tool sometimes to see yourself represented, but other times, like again, they're still learning. We're still growing as an industry, but I would like to see it done a little better.
That's honestly the first time that I've never actually really thought about that. Is the vocal tune of the characters that you play. It's very true. You know, you're kind of hard focused and fixated onto what's set, and there's no actual dynamic range of what you can set your own character's parameters to. And I think that is very important. That's definitely a great mention.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that made me think about like the first time that I played Baldur's Gate and created my character beautiful, and then when it came to the voices, I was like, that doesn't sound like the character that I'm playing. And I mean the voice work is amazing, but I never thought about that part. Like I remember feeling that it didn't match my character, but I didn't like, especially at the moment, didn't think about it just being kind of like race related, if you know what I mean. Like it didn't sound like a black woman. Like if that makes any sense. So I was like, it just doesn't. It's interesting that you brought it up because now it made me think about how many times we've been through like other games and stuff, and the voices just don't match.
Mhm.
That was actually part of what I was gonna bring up. Was my character was actually in Baldur's Gate was the first time I was able to create a character that felt like me, and actually was as close to what I would want or I would envision in myself if I was placed in that scene. But you're absolutely right when I tell you that voice. Oh no.
Yeah, it's just the voices. They just didn't work for my character either. So at the end, I actually went for like a male voice because why not?
Right.
Yeah,
Right. A little more of a deeper tone to it. Like for
yeah,
me, my voice is
Mhm.
not very subtle. On
yeah.
the phone though, I mean my fiance will tell everybody I sound like a little baby.
Mm-hmm.
But on a day in and day out, my voice is definitely a little bit deeper than most. So trying to get that tone from a character, as you mentioned, it's really not available. It's definitely something that could be important, and hopefully, those that are important are here and listening to this very important conversation that we are having on the topic. Dayloh, anything else you'd like to add to this question here?
Yeah, I think, like, for me, like, when I played Sims back then, like, as y'all mentioned how character customizations are important, like, when I play Sims, like, there wasn't much representation, like, when it comes to our skin color and stuff. So now to kind of see that growing, for us to have like a voice and stuff, like we're able to like at least like they should hear from us. I think that's like where they're lacking. They don't listen to us of our feedback to be able to implement stuff. And I feel like they should be able to hear what we're saying cuz like we do have voices and it's kind of irritating, just to see how much Sims progress to where they are now, they start to hear our voices, but when they continue to implement these things and they don't hear from us, it starts to get annoying. So,
I will say
there's a lot of things like that.
I'm not
Yeah.
well versed in Sims, but I did notice a big uproar during an announcement of some form of a pack that was released, and it had to do with something relative to Africa. And the feedback was incredibly negative because it didn't seem that anybody that actually understood the culture was involved in the process of developing that actual pack. So what you're saying seems to be true, that the feedback really is not being heard, because even now, I think that was quite some time ago. That's not the first time, nor has it been the last time that I've heard negative connotations towards that subject of actually hearing feedback from those that are directly affected day in and day out by the
Mhm.
lack thereof.
Yep.
As I wanted to say, as a simmer as well. um, with Sims, they definitely have gotten a lot better. I think with like representation, like they added, like you said, like they added the pronouns now that you can actually choose your pronouns for, and you can actually put in your own pronouns. So if they don't have the ones that represent you, you can put them in yourself, as well as like changing like the way you. Oh, is this someone who can get pregnant? Or oh, is this like what's their sexual orientation? Like there's different parameters now you can use to make your Sims. But I also know like with the pack you were talking about, I think that was the one they released for like around Black History Month.
Yes, it
And
was.
Mhm.
they
And that
did
was big.
they did reach out to I think Ebonics to
Mhm.
work
Okay.
on parts of the pack as well. But I think it's like a thing of having like multiple voices, maybe something that's needed, where sometimes it's like that tokenism. We get one Black person to speak or to create for all Black people when you need a multitude of different voices in order to get different
Mhm.
kinds of perspectives.
And that
Yeah.
ties back into intersectionality and there being so many different voices and so many different opinions within the same cultural group. And that is absolutely very much so important.
I
So, oh,
sorry,
continue.
sorry. I wanted
No, no,
to
no,
add
you're
something.
absolutely fine. Go ahead.
I wanted to add something more to like the question, because I'm more into like story-driven games, kind of like I mentioned before, Last of Us or any horror. I love that. But when it comes to like represent or something that is lacking in these kind of games is that when it comes to like the LGBTQIA plus character, most of the time it's not a Black person, and it's kind of like it doesn't like touch into that detail of like as if queer people didn't exist in the Black community, so we can be both, and it's something that I feel I haven't seen that many, even like I mentioned before The Last of Us having that one character, but it's like in a very short 15 seconds kind of thing, but not like the main character or one important character being Black and queer. It's always like you kind of have to like choose, which is it doesn't feel fair because we exist, the queer Black characters exist. So I think that's something that it's lacking in not just like story driven games but in many games in general.
That's a good point. So, in terms of challenges and barriers, what are the most common mistakes game developers make when portraying Black LGBTQIA plus characters? I know one of those topics was definitely mentioned already, and it's definitely something that I would bring up, but I will let you all take it away.
I think like we talked about, like a lot of it is like I think stereotypes, like just kind of stereotypical portrayals of just Black people in general. Um, but also I find that with like queer representation, sometimes it's not, if I can find the word for it. I feel like it's not as multifaceted as queer Black people can be. Like I don't think that they necessarily speak to the full humanity of, queer Black people, because a lot of times, like, I feel like a lot of times, like you were saying, like with they're only there for like a couple seconds, or maybe they aren't Black, the one queer person that's represented, or they do have Black queer people represented, and there is some tragedy attached to it. They're not allowed to
Yeah.
live. They're not allowed to prosper. No, someone has to die. I feel like that's like an issue. Like, we don't get to see queer Black people especially, be like happy and fully represented as themselves as like full human beings.
That is so true. Like you couldn't say it better. Because when it comes to like the queer character in almost every media, the Black queer character, they always go like through the roughest time. And if they make it to the end of the story, it's like, wow, was it worth it? Because like at the end, I don't know. And it's something like our lives being like kind of like exploited in a sad way. It makes us even more sad. Like, why can't we just be the joyful main character, the joyful queer main character in the game? Or but yeah, it's just like the always tragedy like attached to us is just tiring at this point.
It's
And
almost
yeah,
it's
go ahead.
almost like a diversity hire,
Yeah,
if I may.
Yeah.
yeah,
You
exactly.
toss it in so that nobody can tell you didn't think about it,
Yep.
but you take it right back out the moment you can.
Yeah.
Like, not too much. And
Yeah.
then if you really think about it, is there a tie into horror films and the way that Black people have been portrayed in that scene? Is that something that has heavily influenced the gaming scene? Because the Black person always dies first.
Mm-hmm.
And do we joke about it? Of course we do. Because at this point, you just gotta make fun of the scenario. Yep. But do we think maybe that had something to do with, you see it day in and day out, you see the portrayal consistently in the same script. Now you make games. Maybe you decided you wanted to start developing games because you love the way that things were portrayed on a movie screen, but you want somebody to have their hands on it. Do you think that may have had any type of influence into that?
I think it's like, besides the horror genre, like definitely had to do a lot with the gaming industry. Like the way the Black character is portrayed in the gaming industry has a lot to do with that trope of like the Black character being the first one to die. Right. I think it also has to do with when it comes to queerness, people like they either choose, because they're like, we're gonna put this queer white character because we're gonna have people to accept it, and we can accept one thing but not the other. Like they can be queer, but being Black, that might be pushing it too far for people to like this character. And then it's like they don't want to take the risk of people, because like it's already, we're gonna hate this character for being queer, we don't want them to hate this character for being Black. So I understand the risk they like kind of don't want to take, but at the same time, it's like, take the risk and let the people have it and then have the opinion on that character. But for me, it's more like they are afraid of people receiving and accepting that character for their queer and their Blackness at the same time. So they kind of choose of like either or. It like, that's how I see it a bit.
Dayloh, anything on the membrane here?
No,
or
I think
has it all been covered?
Yeah, I think y'all touched on those. It's just they just have to choose which one,
Right.
and then you either choose we're queer or you don't. Like it's just it's hard because it's just not accepting, and I wish they accept it.
Yeah, it's
like you were saying with
oh no, go ahead, Zess.
It's like you were saying with like having people that we're going to talk about later, but having people in the actual room that represent the people that you're trying to portray. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times it's like when you're not person of color, queerness is seen as like the forefront of who you are. So it's hard for them to understand that as Black people, we have to navigate being both, like you said, intersectionality, being both queer and Black. We don't get to take one off and wear the other instead. So I think there's that disconnect with like being able to portray both. They would rather just portray one because that's easier for them to think about.
And also like the lack of knowing the history, because at the end of the day, queerness came from Black people. Like like honestly, pride in general was created thanks to Black women, Black trans women. So like not knowing your history, not knowing exactly what you're representing, it's very telling, and like we see it, and I guess that's why we're here also talking about it.
Of course. And
Yeah.
I would say it may not even be not knowing, it may just be ignorance is bliss and choosing to not be aware when it's in your face.
Yeah.
There are definitely circumstances where it is very impossible to not be aware of what goes on, but you will choose otherwise because it doesn't impact you. And I think that also ties into this topic in terms of game developers and those that really try to develop the games and cater to the folks that will, they know it's a reoccurring purchase. They know that this group, it's a stigma. Do you cater to the masses, or do you try to actually do something that's purposeful? And 9 times out of 10, across the sphere of life, it's going to be the I want money in my pocket. It's time for somebody to kind of break that barrier and really say, you know what, this matters. This needs to be heard. This needs to be showcased. Let's just do it. Because at the end of the day, you're still going to make your money because people will still buy these games. Let's be serious for a second. We talk about glitches, bugs, errors, but the skins are dropping. I'm gonna buy it.
Yep.
The money's there. That's not the problem. The problem is being scared to be the first to do it, or being scared to help a marginalized group shine. How does the lack of representation affect you personally? I can say if you guys need a moment, and also if I start talking and y'all want to say something, please cut me off. My voice will be heard all evening long. But to give you guys a moment to think on this one, I can say right off the bat, the amount of times that I've been told that I look like Bangalore is absolutely infuriating. And the only reason why that exists is because there are not enough characters that showcase the diversity of a Black lesbian, let alone a Black lesbian that is more masculine. So immediately, because Bangalore represents that demographic, hey, you're Black, you're a lesbian, oh, you got short hair too, you should cosplay as Bangalore. I don't look like that woman. And that, for me, is how the lack of representation has affected. Of course, there are many other topics, but I'd love to hear from you guys.
I have a very like personal experience when it comes to representation. Of course, like everything is personal here, but I mean, in the case of, I'm Latina, I'm Black, and I'm also queer. So when it comes to like representing that, it feels like I have to choose what represents me, because I either get the Latino representation, I either get the Black representation, or I get the queer representation. I don't get like all of those. So personally, if I feel affected because I've never seen in any media a Black Latina being represented, or like a Black queer Latina being represented. It's always like, and when it comes to like people being like, oh, you're Latina, like from Colombia, what, how does it work? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, Black people are like very like dominant in Latin America too. It's just so not seeing like any of those characters, it kind of hurts, because it makes me feel like, well, just be grateful for what you have the Sofia Vergara of every game, because they always look exactly the same. You have the Black character, and then there is a queer one. So I'm like, well, there is one of each, so I guess I should be happy. But like, there could never be one that is like, that's me. And that's how it affects me, like personally, because it just feels like I always have to put one first for the other, and not just be all of them like I am.
I'd say with like
Zest, just come a little bit closer to your mic.
Ooh.
That's fine.
Let me scoot closer.
You got a little too comfortable. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I got a little too laid back. But yeah, like with representation, like for me, I come from a queer family, and so that kind of representation, like I've been seeing more as of late, but growing up wasn't something that I saw often in video games. Like I didn't often see that there were, you know, like I said, queer families, like two mom households, two dad households, not necessarily represented in these games. And it's like it's like a weird thing where you're like, I know I exist. I know my family exists. But for some reason to the outside world or to like a larger group of people, we like you said, ignorance is bliss. We don't exist to them almost. And so that like lack of representation is always kind of jarring in a way. But like I said, in like recent years, I feel like I've seen more like queer families represented, albeit they're more of like a hint sometimes, like, you know, a photograph in the background. You're like, oh, they have two moms. Wow. You know, but yeah, like that type of, I think representation as a kid would have been pretty fantastic to have, honestly.
The photo in the background goes back to what we mentioned about the, here's a little dash. We got it covered. It's there. I promise. You have to look a little hard. It might be in that, on World's Edge back in the, grandma's house in the back right corner on top of the ledge. You got a photo. And it's two moms. We got it.
You have to go through those like YouTube hit and
Like
miss,
them
like
Easter
hidden bits.
eggs.
Yeah. For X you missed and this and that. They were gay, so it's good. It's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. That is so funny.
Yeah,
that's
like
actually hysterical.
yeah, like I don't know, like for me personally, like I feel like I shouldn't be surprised that I found out they're queer in a character. You know, like they bring it up afterwards, like in the middle of the storyline, and it's like maybe that shouldn't be a surprise thing because it should feel like a normal thing, especially when you're trying to get a feel or relate to someone in that manner. So, like for me, when I play video games, like there's like a Borderlands, like I play Borderlands, and there's one of the characters that they bring up and it's in a DLC that, oh, they're having a wedding together in the DLC, but it's not like a main story thing. Like you have to buy it in order to play it to understand it, you know? So it's like, wow, like I have to buy the DLC to play it and to understand what's happening in the game. Like I feel like if that was the case, maybe they should have brought more of that inside the main story if that was something they wanted to represent that instead of forcing people to buy the DLC.
It
Like
also, with that, it's like, if it's in the DLC and it matters enough for it to be in the DLC, how is it not in the main storyline? And that's the
yeah.
one thing that I catch there. On top of the fact that, when was the DLC dropped? What was the timeline on that? What was going on in the space? Did they need to add that into the DLC because they needed to do something to appease the
Mhm.
cause?
Yep.
And that's always the little things. It's the little things you catch.
Yeah.
And the timing. It's the timing for me almost every single time.
Yeah, it's like you can tell that it was like the afterthought. Like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, you really just put that there just because you needed to like meet a quote, but okay.
Right.
But yeah, also like another thing that I notice is people or like the gaming industry has been just like putting the queerness out there as just gay, like a gay character, just being that. And then like I know the community is like it has a lot of like the spectrum is big. It's really big. So but they always like right now they're like, oh, okay, gay, we understand that. So that's what we're gonna put everyone, like every character, the queer character is just gonna be gay. Like we are not gonna explore between like bisexual, pansexual, a trans person, like a trans woman being actually straight, and like all of these things that they don't want to like think about much because like we already understood what gay is. We're not gonna take it further, and it's something that I think is lacking in the whole industry in general. Like I want to bring up something that is happening with like a show that I really love right now, The Boys, for example. What's
I have
happening with
not
that?
watched the new season.
Okay.
Toss it in here.
Okay, it's
I haven't watched it either.
Oh, okay. You know what? Never mind then.
My
I'm gonna get to it.
No, I was. It's
Catch
not.
up.
It's not. It's not a spoiler
Okay.
of the story. It's more of like discussing what's happening with a character's sexuality being like we all knew since the beginning. They were very clear with this character's sexuality, and now because this character is openly with like a person with the same gender, now we're like, okay, they ruined the game. Now it's like what we're exploring someone being bisexual, and now like suddenly I don't understand this because like I understand gay, but bisexual, what is that? So it's like those are the kind of things that I feel like is lacking in the media, because like just take it out there. There's different type of queerness in this society. It's not just gay, and like nothing wrong with being gay, because like, first of all, who am I to say? But I'm just saying like there's more to be explored. There is more to be represented that like one letter of the alphabet.
You can call it lazy. It's the first word that came out. It's the first word that was known, and now that is the word. But bird's not the word, and the word is not gay for me. It is LaDala being aka lesbian. So it needs to be showcased. But it comes down to being lazy and, you know, becoming complacent because they don't have to hear about it. They don't have to deal with it day in and day out. And that's what I was talking about before with it doesn't affect them. So why do I have to now go out of my way to make other people feel comfortable? But that's just the, you know, key factors of being a decent human being. But we'll touch on that. So, how does let's see, actually, we just talked about that. That got me heated for a moment. I gotta lock back in here. What experiences of discrimination or exclusion have you faced within the gaming community?
Where do we even start?
Right. I was gonna say,
how long do we have?
Yeah, because that's a long list.
Now, for me,
playing shooters alone will.
I was gonna say it comes down to just it's the names that people create, but somehow, you know, you put XO in your name and that gets banned from a game, but you see X, Y, and Z and it is out and proud and around all day long with no problem in the world. That that's as much I feel like as I could touch without, you know, using the terms, but we'll just say derogatory terms being utilized in different ways that it isn't the exact word, but you, I, and the people that are monitoring this game know exactly what it says, but it's not a problem.
Definitely like a lack of moderation in the community that I find is like very, like you can have these games that have queer characters that are like, you know, you guys celebrate pride and you welcome your queer, you know, your players, but then they get into a game and like we have to deal with like the craziest things being said on voice chat or even just in regular text chat. And there's, I mean, like for instance, like I know Valorant can get really toxic sometimes with their player base, but I know they recently added hardware bans to help people with that. So it's like sometimes they take steps, but it took forever just to get that. But it's like that like just being able to get on a game and like not have to worry about someone mentioning like race or gender or sexuality, like that's like non-existent right now. Like no matter what, like I can't get on a game and speak. I refuse to turn my mic on unless I hear like maybe like another woman on the game. I refuse to speak because I just don't want to face that kind of discrimination, you know, when I'm just trying to play a game for fun.
Yeah, it's also something that like the creators of the characters or the game, they kind of know what they're doing. And again, it goes back to laziness, because you create this character, give it a queer backstory, and then they say, well, the hate, no, you deal with it, not my problem. Like we gave you this character already, so now it's your problem. If you choose to play with this character, well, that was your own decision. And it sucks because like you should know what, like, it comes by creating this character. You should have a better way to deal in moderation for this. And if we're telling you, or like if we're banning this person, if we are telling you this person is an issue, you should actually deal with it and not just be like, well, but you're playing with the character that you wanted. And it's like, that's not the point. The point is that now I'm dealing with all of this hate for no reason. And like, I tap in a game to have fun, not to be like, not to live the everyday life experience of someone rejecting me just for who I am. And yeah, it's just the racism, the homophobia, the misogyny that I had to deal with, even, and this is very like specific to me, even within the drag community, even within the LGBTQIA plus community, you already have so much discrimination because like, being gay doesn't take away the fact that you're a misogynistic person. Like, you still are saying comments and things that are like problematic, and you don't get a pass just for that. In the drag scene, people have like me having to fight for this of like, it's not, oh, you're like a woman playing like with makeup and stuff. It's like, no, I'm a drag queen just like any other person doing drag and putting in this bunch of makeup. And so yeah, like, it's a very personal case with the drag part, but I think all of us can relate to the part of people from within the community, the LGBTQIA community, still discriminating you for being a woman, especially a Black woman.
I would say in general, just sometimes LGBTQIA plus community in general tends to be a problem within the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
That is a
Mhm.
much larger conversation that can
Yep.
be its own panel. Because Lord have mercy. Dayloh, any thoughts on this question here?
No, y'all touch on everything. It's just really people just love to hide a fake face on the internet.
Oof, oof. I have to snap for that one. I dealt with that yesterday.
Okay, because it sucks that we have to talk about moderation, safety on our internet, and the internet deals with a whole bunch of problems with gaming and all that and stuff, and the lack of safety behind it is just, especially off a video game, let alone where you're not getting hurt in real life, but the fact that your words can hurt you in real life from a video game is a lot. So it's really just the lack of safety overall is what's really going on as far as gaming for us. So
And just to touch on the moderation portion, this past couple of days I've had BIPOC in my title for an outside reason. And prior to putting it up, I had to inform my moderators, hey, this is going to be in my title for the next 2 weeks. Just be ready to go. Because we all know what comes with having that in your title. There are people that are actively going out of their way to look for the tag LGBTQIA+. They're looking for the tag of BIPOC. They're looking for the tag Black, female. All those are in my. I'm not taking it out anytime soon. But when you add it into your title, it's now in your face. It's not just looking for the actual tags. So we had to prep for that. And again, it has to do with names. The name was apparent as to what they meant to say.
Mm-hmm.
How is it clearing the channels that are needed to create a username? And that could go down to, again, a lack of care. We have a system, it's bulletproof, it'll do the job. But emotes are being prevented because they're silly. But this username will clear base any day of the week. So I feel as if maybe it doesn't get through the system the first time, but if the name is being banned on multiple accounts from different creators, maybe it's time to say, okay, clearly this name shouldn't be approved. Let's see if there's anything else that looks like it. I mean, I can ask you all right now, how many variations of the ignorant words that are used do you have banned in your chat?
Oh my god.
Because
Holy
I have
Jesus.
every single
Oh,
way
gosh.
of typing the word.
You want me to get a dictionary out? Like, that's too
Get
much.
creative.
I literally went to like different ways to like a whole blog. There's like a whole blog that you can go to, and I copy and pasted that whole list and put it
Amazing.
like just there because
Yep.
oh my god.
It's the amount of variations, and that's what it comes down to. You know what it means. We can't sit here and act like we can't see it. If we are able to go out of our way to prevent it from even entering our space, how is it possible for it to even be typed?
Yeah.
And I think that's a bigger part of the conversation, but it really does tie all this in together. Thank you, ladies, for your opinions there. What are the systematic issues within the gaming industry? So we did touch base on one of them there, which would be the moderation tools and things like that. But on a deeper scale now, almost with tying in horror films into the way that things are produced, that would be one way that I would say, systematically, that has been engraved into the focus. It's now something that is a part of the commonality. If you don't have the black person dying first, what is your horror film? So now, in gaming, if it is a horror game, I don't really play story-based games. I'm not going to sit here and lie to everybody. But I feel like I may even be able to go ahead and assume that there's probably, if there's two black characters, at least one of them's dying within the first two story books of the story-based entry. Like, they're not making it very far.
Or they're not the main, or they're not important. Yeah, like 2, that's too much. They don't know that number.
But is there any other way that you guys would like to discuss how systematically it could even be improved?
Well, just inviting the people that are part of the community you're trying to represent to work on the project is already a good, like, it wouldn't solve everything, but it would be a huge step towards, because like you can tell when someone is working with the people that they're trying to represent. Because the thing is, like, the issue is that they clearly don't have black people in there. Like, they clearly don't have enough black people working in the important and like the decision making parts of the games that are being, because they probably have the the hire, like the black hire they need for the company, but that person is not in a position of power to tell this is wrong. Hey, you should maybe do this, or maybe try to do a little bit more of that. And I think that's one of the main issues, is just they don't have the people they're trying, like, working with them, the ones they're trying to represent.
I think the thing is, there's people that want to work, and it seems like, they just don't want to bring those people on. Like, I think about the people, like with Sims, especially, like the moderate, like, not the modding community. So a lot of games, like even like Baldur's Gate as well, like there are people who got out here creating mods so that black people can feel represented in these games. Like they're putting in the work that honestly the people who created the game should be putting the work in to do. And now, like, I know it seems like they're coming around to bringing in more people to help work on things, but that game's been out for years now. It's been out for years, and that content, those mods, those that create the CC that they make, all of that, they've been doing it since the conception of the game. So it's very unfortunate though that, like, we kind of have to take that extra mile, that extra step, just to see ourselves like fully represented, even when they give us the little bit of crumbs of representation they give. Like Dayloh was talking about, like the skin complexions. Those skin complexions were horrible. They were horrendous at first, but now they've actually like expanded upon that. But I just think the fact that I love the creativity that comes out of modding and CC creating. I hope that never stops. But it's just the fact that it came out of a need for this representation and not necessarily out of just like a desire.
Yeah. I'll also say that for like a person, like for me, that wants to work behind the scenes of video games, there's not many video games companies that wants to hire us. So that becomes an issue as well if we're trying to be that representation and trying to voice our thoughts. They don't want to hire us at all, or they pay us in a low salary to work in that company as well. So, like, that could be, like, a major gaming industry that needs to be improved on, because I don't want to be in that field where my voice is not being heard, and I have to, like, try to break barriers. I have to keep communicating these things that this is what the people want, that this is my opinion and thoughts on that, and I'm still getting shut down behind these thoughts. So I see another issue with that when it comes to the game industry, of especially of those who wants to work behind the scenes of that.
Yes, hiring diversity in general is typically a
Yeah.
struggle, let alone a black female, let alone a black female that is LGBTQIA plus. So you get deeper and deeper into the scale of reasons why there are issues, and it does come down to, unfortunately relying on others to speak up. And typically those voices are not a part of the community directly. And also particularly, it usually takes a negative situation for it to then be approached. And it ties back into Zest, what you had mentioned. Something has to happen for you to now decide, okay, this is what I should do, rather than it just being, hey, why don't we hire them because they're good at what they do? And we can't sit here and say they aren't there, because they are. It's very much apparent. We see it on the timeline, looking for a job. Give somebody a chance, because you have no idea what can come from that chance in regards to your entire company. A lot of the greatest and most brilliant things that have been created on this God-given earth have been from slaves. And you heard it here first.
Yep.
If you haven't heard it
Mhm.
before. Okay. We're getting into the nitty-gritty here, but more on a lighter aspect. What elements make representation feel authentic and respectful? Whether that be conversations you've seen, developers speaking up on topics, conversations from the community that have been showcased, or even creators being put out there showcasing the game or the company or the community out in the public.
Ooh. Did y'all see the Assassin's Creed trailer? The new
Oh
one?
yeah.
Okay. That's a good example right there, how there's a lot of representation to see a black samurai, right? But then, like, it was very nice to see, but the backlash behind that was god awful. Like, holy crap! Like, I never felt more exciting to see a black samurai, because you don't usually see that in an Assassin's Creed. Because I used to play Assassin's Creed back then, and it's always like a white protagonist or something historical back then or anything like that. And now you're starting to see more diversity into that, which is important. So being able to represent more of that, and it's not like we started to exist today. Like, no, we've been existing back then. So like being able to represent that and show that, authentically with that, like that's something that's a good example of that, is how they're showing, more representation with that.
They put their whole foot in that trailer. Let me
Dude,
tell you, because
yeah.
my God.
It was
I gotta watch
beautiful.
it.
Yes, it was beautiful.
I would say though, I was expecting a little bit more of gameplay. Just, for me, I'm like
Yeah.
I want to see a little bit more gameplay, but yeah.
I will say, not to bring it back to, well, to bring it back to shooters again. Apex, I think they did a really good job. I think that they've been doing a really good job with like making sure that they came out with Catalyst I think it was last year,
Yes.
but making sure that like also the person behind the character is also like a trans woman, so that it feels more authentic to the actual character. You're giving them, like, you're actually giving this person a voice in the game. I thought that was very, very respectable. It's what they should do.
Right.
Honestly, it's at the end of the day, like,
But what
no
you
matter
almost
what.
said is also, you're not even thinking about it, but it's because it's what's used all the time. It's just the common tongue. And that you catching yourself is because you are aware. But the average person would have continued on to say, it was respectable. No, they did the right thing, yes, but it should have been done. They did it correctly, and they're showcasing other people what should be done. And I can say, just from meeting them, that was one of the biggest gigs. They felt so prideful in the opportunity to be able to do that, to be able to actually be heard, literally and figuratively. Um, for me, just to attest to Apex as well, their devs have been more outspoken on topics directly, not just through the Apex page. And I would love to see more of that across the board. I think that, yes, a company is a company and you should be united, but we all have different opinions. And being able to see a developer from more than just the person that's putting together the game and actually as a human being has been so refreshing. Alter is asexual, and somebody had commented on controversy that had occurred more recently with a certain creator. I will not say their name; it's a waste of breath. But they decided to discuss the characters, and there were a lot of comments on what Alter's identity was. And the developer took their time, specifically who created Alter, to reply to each individual comment and say, yes, they're asexual. No, they're asexual. Went through the entire thread. And it's little things like that. They may not think that we saw that, but I definitely did. And that's what matters. It's doing it because you feel as you should. They didn't do it for the attention. They didn't do it because, the company said, hey, you need to reply to those things. I was able to meet the developer that created Alter, and the passion that they have for that character is the highest of tiers. So being able to actually see that after meeting them in person, I now know, that's genuine. That's not just a show. And we need more of that. Her, do you have any thoughts on this topic here as well? I know you also focus on different games, so I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I think the more hate the character or the game gets, the more authentic they are, honestly. It's unfortunate to say it, to put it that way, but lately, I noticed that's like the pattern. Whenever they put, for me, like if I see the haters putting something like, oh, this game way woke, or this game, I'm like, I'm gonna play that game because that game it's probably telling me like this real character, and it's like they actually are like thought about it. They actually put on a like a real person. It feels real, and that's when I see those kind of things, like that kind of hate. I'm like, okay, that character is actually, it's probably very like very relatable. And that's something that I notice. And again, it's unfortunate to say like when they get hate, it's because they're more authentic, but it's true. It's something that me personally, I see how the people react and like the haters react to a game or something that I'm interested in playing. Because if I see something like, oh, I love this game is 10 out of 10 from those kind of people, I'm like, nah, that game has not a single person of color in there. That game has not a single uh like representation in that. So I'm just like, I usually just go for the games that have like the negative impact on the wrong people, if I like, if that makes any sense.
100%.
So yeah, so like I for example, I'm not like a Star Wars person, never seen the movies, never, but then I saw the game. Yeah, sorry, cancel me, everyone, it's over. Leave me. It's never been for me. So, but once I saw people were like raging about the main character because she's not very feminine and like the features, I was like, I'm gonna play that game. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what's going on there, but that game, because that character, it's probably like we don't even know what her trait is. We just saw an image of that character. So, but that to me feels like, okay, it's given an impact to the haters in a way that it's like these people were prepared to face these kind of things. So in a way they thought about giving authenticity and like a feeling to this character that you can relate to. So that's how I go through games. Just like if you hate it, I'm probably gonna play it.
Feeling's a good point though, because a lot of games people don't really realize there's emotion behind all of it.
Mhm.
Whether it's just playing a shooter or a story-based mode game, or you're building a house in Animal Crossing, there's passion behind every story. And if you're able to see yourself be represented while also feeling passionate about the game, it's just a whole nother level. That's why there's a little bit of passion in my voice before, because it's a topic that I'm passionate about
Mhm.
and a community that has respect for that passion. And I think that's incredibly important. What are your favorite successful examples from other media forms? So outside of gaming and everyday life, what are some moments that you've really sat back and you said, wow, that was done the right way?
There's a show I'm watching now that I think does really well with just, I don't know, just having Black queer people existing. I'm currently watching Interview with the Vampire,
Okay.
and I'm loving the representation. Like, I love that we have two Black main characters now, which, from the original story, everybody's white except for the slaves that are shown in it.
Right.
So I've been enjoying that depiction of, like, powerful Black vampires existing, and, just they get to be fully realized people. I think that's a big thing, again, is just being fully, like, you can be good and you can be bad because they're human, and you should show that humanity. You shouldn't just show one side of people because you take away their humanity when you do that. I just love the fact that we get to kind of see these characters just exist and, be themselves outside of, like, yes, they're Black and they're queer, but they're also humans. They're regular people. Well, human. They're vampires. They're not humans, but they're they're regular vampires.
Hmm. I'm thinking about, like, I have to go through a whole list of, because honestly, I watch a lot of anime, and anime has almost zero representation
None.
of
Yeah.
like,
None.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so
Or they end up being crazy if
Oh,
there is representation.
or if there is, it's actually more insulting than it is representing. But so, like, I'm trying to go, when it comes to queerness, I think in anime there's more representation when it comes to queerness in anime and stuff. So, and like more so now, a little bit, like, people are more open to, like, the stories, the mangas and stuff. It's more open to, like, create the stories about the character being queer, or not even discussing the character sexuality, because it's not important, it's not the point. But thinking about, like, shows that I watch, or something else that I watch, I would say, and I'm gonna go back to The Boys, no spoilers, but I would say, like, the it's very controversial what they do in that show. Controversial for some people. For me, it's just like, yeah, I mean, sure.
They do a
but
phenomenal job.
Yes,
but
they do.
and one thing they do really good is showing queerness in almost every character. Like, and there is no need for explanation of their actions. You just, and you as a queer person, you know that that is just a queer person, and you're like, yeah, I mean, that's how we are. So then, and they're like, I'm not gonna make it simple to you, and I'm not gonna, like, sugarcoat it for other people that are not in the queer spectrum to, like, understand. It's just like, oh yeah, that's just queer people being queer people. And I love how that show does it. It's just like, it's one of those things that I'm like, oh my god, this show is so good. It's
After
like,
every episode, you're like, wow, they really
yeah,
did
Yeah.
that.
yeah, I'm like,
Amazing.
oh my god, that was so good. Yeah. So I think that's like the show that does not just queerness, a lot of representation really well. Blackness, because it also goes through, like, of course there is, like, a lot of racial stereotypes, but that's like the part, like, making it a joke is part of processing our traumas, is part of, like, our lives experience. So making it in a way, like, those racial conflicts and stuff, it's something that I'm like, I relate to that because I've been there. I feel for that character, even though this character is awful. I kind of feel for this character because I know what they've been through because of the race. And I'm always gonna be, like, a big fan of the show. I mean, it depends what they do for the next season, but so
I love
far, so far they've done an amazing job when it comes to representing both queerness and blackness, in my
And to
opinion.
touch on The Boys as well, they do a great job of showcasing Black mental health.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think across the board, you touched on realism. And I think that's the reason why the show is so fantastic is they, as you mentioned, they don't sugarcoat anything on that show. It is shown for what it is. It is shown for how it has been handled, how it was processed,
Mhm.
how it was accepted or denied. And I did see something on the timeline about, I think the group that they're making fun of is starting to realize that they're being made fun of. And
Yeah.
I'm so excited to watch the new season because again, they have yet to disappoint.
Yep, that's what I wanted to, because like it's been my Twitter has been crazy with the whole like the hate, but it's because now these people kind of realize that they're
Right.
not the target actually, and now
Yep.
they're like offended, and I'm like, "Ooh, too bad." Well, such an amazing show.
Dayloh, anything else to add on there?
No, cause I it's like I have one, but there's just so much hate in this world. They like to block it. So I'll come back to y'all
You're
when
fine. You're fine.
when I have it. But there is some good moments. It's just a blur of a mind right now. But I will
give
have
you a
that moment.
Like I said, I can yap, baby. I can do it all day. For me, the WNBA honestly was one of those groups that obviously there are Black women, but
Yeah.
now there are Black LGBTQIA plus women as well that are way more vocal. And I believe it was either last year or 2 years ago. I believe it was during COVID. Actually, my timeline to the audience. I forget days of the week at this point in time. I don't know what year it is.
I don't know
I think
either.
I'm 29. I'm trying to figure it out.
After
that whole year.
after 2020, what are days? What are
That's what I'm
months?
saying.
Yeah.
But they did hold a protest during a playoff game. I believe it may have even been the championship game, and they did not play, and it was due to a Black person being killed by a cop. And like I said, we could hold a completely separate panel for that conversation. But to tie it back in, there are members of the LGBTQIA plus community within the group that did protest, and it became a WNBA wide thing, and it led to NBA players now speaking up and taking part of the conversation. So it was a really big step forward for the entire basketball scene because again, it has not been accepted to be LGBTQIA plus identifying and Black, let alone being a basketball star, because that is the bread and butter of African American culture in the sports scene. That was it for us for quite some time. That was the one. Until barriers were broken there. So now the walls have been broken down by women, and I love that. I love that for the community. I love that for Black people across the board. I think it's something beautiful to be able to say that. But the main focus there was the hate that came from it was because there were Black LGBTQIA plus members there. If it was just white members across the board on that team, I don't think it would have been that big of a problem. And I don't think it's really hard to even say that anymore because it tends to be the start or end of the topic. So for me, seeing that on national television was one of the coolest things.
Yeah, it just goes back to what I was saying before. It's usually like people would accept one or the other, just the queerness or the Blackness. So and then once you have both, like it's happening, and it's like it's too much. That it's something that I can accept it, and that's when it gets like all the backlash and everything that's happening. That's when everyone jumps in Twitter to have a comment about whatever is happening, even though they are not really part of the situation. So
the think pieces are my favorite.
Yeah.
The think pieces are a classic.
Yeah.
So, Dayloh, if that comes to mind, let us know. I want to hear it all. But we
Yeah,
are
I
going
do.
to move on. Oh, here we go. Yes. Give it to me.
I don't watch WWE, but there has been a lot of Black woman representation on WWE lately. Like I see it on my timeline, and then I see how like just exciting to see a Black woman in the head spot wrestling, the face of the name wrestling. Like it's very enjoyable to see that lately, even though I don't watch WWE, so I don't know anything about that. I'm so sorry. But just seeing that on my timeline is something that I would like to see a strong woman, a Black strong woman, seeing a Black strong woman. Okay, you don't hear those 3 words at the same time. Okay, just seeing that on there is just something that is lucky to, see that on your timeline. Now, hopefully we see a Black queer strong woman, but, we'll get that there. But, seeing that is so nice to.
That does actually transition into our next question beautifully. So I'm
Good.
glad that thought came to mind. Because the question is, how does seeing or not seeing yourself represented in games influence your engagement with the medium? So my question to you, Dayloh, to start this question off, a lot of questions there. Would you now be more apt to watching WWE? Do you find yourself now kind of checking timeline every once in a while and saying, oh, there they are, and you actually click the video and you're engaging with that medium? Would you even go further to say you might actually watch a full, Raw night? I think that's what it's
called. Yeah, kind of. Like, I feel like sometimes you need that, like, representation to feel relatable to watch something. Like, even if, like, there's, like, an anime and you see, like, a Black woman that pops up, then it's be like, "Oh, I'm interested now," Like, I think, like, somebody is always interested to see someone like themselves on something to be able to click on it and watch it. You may be interested in the future or not, that's, like, up to your personality or what you feel like, but it's also something that you could find something that you can relate to and look back on and say, "Oh, they look like me. Oh, I'm kinda intrigued on what they have and what they do," and you'll maybe find other things that you may not know. So, yeah, I think you be able once you see something, yeah, for sure. I think it definitely influences you.
think I love that. Like I love seeing like when I find myself like represented in a game, but then there's times where I'm like, I feel like this shouldn't be like a, oh my God, ooh, it's a Black person. Like I shouldn't have to necessarily feel that way to be like, oh man, like I feel like I should be used to like now we should have as much like I would have expected by now. We've had at least more representation where that isn't such a surprise. But like even like I was playing an indie game recently that I really like called Crush House, and I saw that you could have there were Black characters in the game, and I was like, oh my God! Like at first I was like, I'm excited about the game, interested, looks really. As soon as I saw there were also like Black characters, it was like the level went from like here mid level to like top. Like I was like, yeah, 10 out of 10. We're playing this game. Like we have to play this game. But I think the only thing that sucks is that, because we're kind of sometimes pressed for representation that we sometimes have to like accept what's given to us. Sometimes that representation, it's like, yeah, it's a Black queer woman, but is this Black queer woman written well? Is she, are am I finding that I like this character at all? Like, do I find that this character even represents or that their story even represents who they're supposed to be? Like, there's like that kind of like sometimes disconnect where it's like, I'm happy to see this person, but I'm a little sad that maybe they're not the best representation that I would like to see.
Yeah, many times I find myself like going checking something that includes Black women, queer women, or Latina in my case. And then being a little bit more critical when it comes to like the character, just because I'm like, okay, I'm excited. And then I know a bunch of other people just like me tune in for this just because of this character. But then I start like picking a little bit more that character because I want to make sure that that is represented very well. But it does influence on the fact that I'm like, I'm just going to watch, play, or do this just because it involves a Black woman. If it's a Black woman, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't care if it's like, I don't care if it's, if they're not queer or like Black women. I'm already like, yeah, sure. I mean, I have to play it. I have to watch it. But in my case, sometimes it's hard for like, again, because it circles back to the point of sometimes I feel like I have to choose what represents me, and I'm like, "Ugh, I don't really want to," and then I'm like, I just like tap out, and I'm just like, you know what, I'm not gonna watch it. Yeah, let other people have it, but also I shouldn't feel like again surprised because there is this like other person and like I shouldn't be expecting and wanting so bad to have one character that represents me. Like I shouldn't be just expecting that one Afro Latina queer person. Like it should just be there, and it shouldn't be something that makes me want to watch it. But if it happens, whatever the project is, I for sure will be there. I'm just gonna be like, yep, I have to watch it, I have to see it. Yeah.
Right. Gonna support it, see it through.
Yeah.
For me, Baldur's Gate was that game for me. I had never played any type of turnstile gameplay or role play style. So the ability to once I learned that I could customize my character the way that I saw fit, I was like, you know what, chat, we're gonna try this out. I might absolutely hate this game, but I have to at least attempt it. And hook, line, and sinker. I mean, the second I was able to create my character, and like I said, it looked the exact way I wanted her to look, it was fantastic. And then you talk about the LGBTQIA plus representation in that game as well, where you're able to be dynamic with your character and actually set your character's own terms to how they want to live their life. I just thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. Baldur's Gate is one of those things. Like, I also got into the game because of that, because I was like, wait, what? I can be just
Right.
what, like, with this and that, and like the hairstyles and all of that. And funny thing is, I have the game, made the whole character, and I think I went like half through the game, and then I just never played again. But I got it just because I could do all of that. Like, this is the reason. I don't know anything about the story, and I'm not good at it, but I'm just like, well, I can literally be myself in this game. I'm gonna buy it.
Right
So,
there with your sister.
yeah.
I was terrible.
Yeah.
We got all the way to Act 3, and then it just, other games started coming out. We had too many people in one group. It just became a tragedy. But every moment that I was on that game, I enjoyed it thoroughly, not just because of the gameplay itself, but just the dynamic ability to perceive my character the way that I saw fit. I thought that was such a beautiful aspect.
Yeah.
How do you think representation shapes public perception and acceptance of being Black and LGBTQIA+. That's a deep one. That's usually a twofer right there. You got a couple of topics all sat in one.
I think it's again with like showing like people's humanity. So like, you know, we should treat everyone with like the same respect and like, you know, that we all want. But, you know, there's a tendency, like if you don't know a lot of queer people in your day to day, or maybe you don't know a lot of Black people in your day to day, or both Black queer people, you may not fully be able to empathize all the time. And so I feel like that representation builds empathy in people. And it sucks that it's like you have to see something in order to feel empathy towards another person, but that tends to be the case, where they see this representation and it's like, oh, okay, this is someone who's not necessarily like me, but they're doing the same things that I do, or they're interested in the same things that I am, or they're, you know, they exist in a similar fashion that I do. I think it just kind of builds, like you said, like I said, that empathy and that like ability to see humanity in you know, queer people, which oftentimes people are trying to strip us of our humanity.
This is very true.
I'm trying to understand a little bit more the question, because this one is I kind of have to like translate it in Spanish to understand.
I got you. You're fine.
Yeah.
It's essentially the public eye.
Yeah.
How do you believe? Well, yeah. How do you believe a game that has a character or a storyline or somebody or something that symbolizes who you are as a person? How do you think that helps the common person understand you better? Do you think it does that? Do you think there's an aspect of a game having LGBTQIA plus and Black characters together as one in a game? Do you think that assists, you know, the ignorance that may be fueling the fire to not understanding who we are as people?
Oh, absolutely. Like, now that I understand the question.
Take your time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, it's one of those things that, again, people are gonna stay ignorant until you show them the answer basically there. Or like, for me, I'm a very visual person, right? So it's like sometimes we have to get into the mind of people to like learn how to teach them, or like kind of like help them understand, because like you have to be patient with a lot of people to teach them when it comes to like your Black and your queerness. And I know it shouldn't be up to us to teach all of these people, because it's like it should be just the norm that people understand that like it's just whatever they choose to be or they are, just respect them. Simple as that. But once you have some kind of media, a video game especially, having a character like full, like explaining kind of your traits or who you are or represents you in a way, it's easier to be like, hey, I'm not going to explain to you exactly everything about my life, but here is this game that you can see. And it kind of like, if you like this character, oh, she's kind of like me. Or you can have this character as an example of like, oh, do you like this character? She's kind of like me because we do this and that. And then maybe we'll help the person understand in general you and what you are all about and like what you're trying to represent. And again, it shouldn't be our job to teach everyone this, but having media that helps you teach that is helpful in a way. It's like the best way for me in my case to communicate with some people that don't understand what I'm trying to say.
No, I think you made a good point there, especially about, it shouldn't be your job to educate the masses.
Mhm.
We are literally on the internet, and if you click your new tab button, it will probably pop up to Google.
Mhm.
And, typically I have conversations with my community directly about certain topics, but there will always be an extent to that because now you're not putting in the time to learn about it. So who's to say you'll actually retain the conversation we're having?
Mhm.
When something is purposeful and you truly have meaning behind your actions, you're going to be driven to educate yourself. And so that's usually where I'll dive that standpoint is, do you want to be educated or do you want to learn?
Mhm.
There's a difference between the two things. If you want to be
Yeah.
educated, you're going to go out of your way to take the time to research and dive further into the topics. And when you have questions afterwards, now approach me with those questions. If you're confused about something, absolutely ask me. But to sit here and talk for 30 minutes, you probably could have read a whole article by now and learned a little bit more than what I could probably even portray to you and maybe give you a deeper understanding of what it is to be Black and queer.
Mhm.
So when we talk about games and how that could be so influential on any scope, I mean, I feel like the number is just the limit does not exist. There's so many opportunities and ways for that to help not only the perception that's placed on the community, but help the masses realize why it is so important to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
So we only have a couple of questions left here. But these two, in my opinion, are incredibly important, so we will be going over time. How important is it to have Black LGBTQIA plus individuals involved in the game development process? Now, we did mention it before that it's important, but now it's time to discuss why, and to tie in the second one, I guess lightly, what could they do?
We talked about like you said, just involving the people that you're actually making games about in the actual process. Because well, it's about how important it is, but it's important because like you can't get the perspective that you're trying to get across in the game without having those people on your team who have those mindsets or those experiences. So if you're trying to portray a certain experience one way, or like say my character went through, I don't know, because they love putting also racism in the games, but my character is going through a racist situation. What would they do? You know, if you're not Black in that instance, like you may not know how to accurately portray how someone would respond to those actions. So it's like important to have people who have been through those experiences on the team so that they can at least like inform you of how to accurately portray these people.
Yeah. It's like let me think about the right words for a second.
Take your time.
And
Take your time. Dayloh, any direct advice to the developers or even just reasons why it's important?
Yeah, it's really just researching, really, and kind of not forcing. I want to say forcing, but like you just need to be able to kind of dive into the character. Like if you're trying to create a storyline for the character, don't like don't I wouldn't say if you have nothing related to that character, you should seek other experiences from other team members or outside of that to get those knowledge to be able to develop a better story for that character. Like the character that you're trying to make or you're trying to show representation, like there's a lot like, you could get a lot of guidance and research, because there's no I in team, like, it's not a one-person job, like, you have to be able to, you know be able to, like, ask someone, like, it shouldn't have just be a one insider voice, like, it has to be multiple things outside of that. So, there should be, if you're ever trying to voice somebody, it shouldn't just be, uh well, it shouldn't just be just like a random person voicing a black character, like, there should be a black character voicing a black character. If you're trying to get more, representation by that, like, be authentic and show that representation by that, because that's really important. That's what get people to come, that's what get people to educate and learn other experiences behind that too, because then somebody may not know that, oh, there are experience about it, and then they be able to learn in that too. So, yeah, so, like, I think it's just really important overall to, like y'all mentioned, how to educate, learn, ask questions if needed, because that's what's most important. Like, if you really want to be authentic and be able to tell a story, you have to be able to ask others to make a story like that.
I want to bring surveys back. I feel like surveys used to be very big.
They
And the
used to
more
be
you kept
huge.
mentioning, they used to be so important.
Yeah.
And, I have skipped a survey or two. I won't sit here and tell a bold-faced lie. Sometimes I don't have the time. But when it comes to certain demographics and conversations that need to be had, they're only possible if you do the research, and that's what ties into what Dayloh was saying. Research is important, but research that is purposeful is even better. And if you're taking from the community that is relevant to what you are trying to produce or trying to build upon to support intersectionality, that's a very key feature. A survey, a good old handy dandy survey. You have all our information anyway. Send it out.
Yep.
Mhm.
Are
Yeah.
you black identifying and LGBTQIA plus? Yes, no. No? Thank you for partaking in
Yeah.
the survey.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So thinking about like the importance of having the person, besides like teaching the other masses about our experiences, it's also an authentic way to represent our experiences, and it will get me and people like us more into the game. Let's say, if I hear, because something like, if I hear a good review for someone that is like me saying this game is authentic and it represents people like us, I'm gonna buy it. Like, I'm gonna go for sure, and I'm gonna be like, okay, I don't know what kind of game it is, but it has something that represents me, and it has something that I feel I identify with. It's something that like move the masses, the right masses, I would call it, like the ones that you're trying to involve. Because if you're trying to involve like Black LGBTQIA plus community, you have to have a Black LGBTQIA plus person in the process of creating this, because it's the only way you're gonna get it right, and you're gonna get the story, like the story being told in the right way. Because once we know someone, like we can tell when someone wasn't, like someone of our people wasn't involved in the story, and then you're like, okay, that's not right. And then that's when it starts getting like, okay, I don't recommend this game because it doesn't have an accurate picture of what this situation would be. And having like the importance of having someone of the community you're trying to represent is just shown right there. Because once the game is done, once the story is done, you're like, okay, you can tell who was involved. And I think if I wouldn't say like it's, you're never gonna mess it up if you don't, like if you have the right people, you might. But it will reduce the amount of like uh how do you say, like lack of representation for our community. So keep hire more Black LGBTQIA people,
Yep.
please. It's an order.
Please.
Amen to that. Now, before we do say our goodbyes to you lovely ladies, is there any advice that you would like to give to those out in the audience that are Black and LGBTQIA plus representing?
I'd say don't stop, raising an uproar about the things that we see in gaming in this industry. Don't stop complaining. Don't stop, going at these developers and these companies and telling them to do better. Keep putting your voice out there because it's important. And it may seem like they're not hearing you, but you're not alone. So if you keep, vocalizing how you feel and what you think is right, other people will also do the same, and they'll feel the need to also step up, and maybe we'll finally get the representation we need. Maybe.
Be who you are. No, I'm joking.
For your pride. It's okay. Yeah, because I was thinking of that too.
Amazing.
Sorry, it was in the back of my mind, and I was like, I have to say.
Yeah, because I was thinking that too.
Yeah. But my advice is, I know it's tiring, and I know it's been like years of us asking for the same thing over and over again. But patience. Patience, it's like the key. And I know it's like, why should we wait for things to happen? Well, unfortunately, it's like it is the way it is now, but it pays off. Like, think about it, like 5 years ago, a Black lead character in a video game, that was kind of crazy. That was like, now it's a little bit more common. So now we're starting to see, okay, there is a Black lead character, maybe Nets, now that they're hearing, because they heard our voices 5 years ago. Now we're probably gonna get the Black queer character. So just be patient, but at the same time, do not stop talking about it. Do not stop being loud as necessary for the things to happen. But nothing is gonna happen in a month, because games are also not made in a month. So these things are gonna take time. But once you're patient, and like your service, your patient, it's everything is gonna pay off if we just keep talking about it.
Dayloh, any advice to the audience?
Yeah. Y'all touch on some good advices. I would say, for those that are an ally, just support the LGBTQIA plus, especially like if you're curious about why are we voicing our thoughts and opinions about it, ask us. We're always here to talk and to educate, to even though it's tiring, I think us keep sharing about it is what it's important for us to keep addressing it, because it's what we want to see, what we want to continue to show as well. So just be able to keep talking about it, keep being able to pinpoint what's wrong, what's right. I think us being able to be the voices, it's definitely the freaking horrible thing, but I'm be honest, like, if we keep doing it, it's gonna pay off, and we'll finally find something that we actually want to see and that we actually want to, and maybe one day you'll be the person behind the scenes that'll be working on that stuff, and you'll be able to, you know, be involved with the gaming in the community as well. So, just be able to, keep asking those questions, keep asking, what we want to see, what you want to see, and keep addressing things. That's how it goes.
I wanted to add something else to that. There are people out there that are already doing a lot of things for this community, and might be like indie games and stuff, but we do need to support them a little bit more. And at this
Yeah.
time, like at this point, we should also know which games and which companies are not listening to our voices, and we should stop supporting them, because that is not going to change. But like, it's been years, and you should know now that there are certain companies that doesn't matter how loud you get, those ones are never going to hear our voices. But then take our focus from those companies, from expecting something from there, and support the ones that are already doing something for that, like small developers, small games. Just look for them. There are, like, if you look for, again, it's one of those things that if you're interested, you're gonna Google it. Google is free, and you could Google now. There probably already is a game for your type of, like, your likeness, and for something that represents you a little bit more. We just need to work. We also need to work a little bit harder in supporting people that are already doing the job, and not just expecting from big companies and big names to do something about it.
You touched on what I was going to say, but just to add emphasis to that, support one another, not just because of, being a member of the community, but because we do better with numbers. We do better in general mentally. Noticing support, whether it be in a stream, in a chat, a post. If you see somebody's sponsored post and it's their first one, and they're also a member of the LGBTQIA community, guess what? Those numbers matter, because 9 times out of 10 they took a risk, and it's gonna be that one and done scenario. It's been a long time that we still lack representation across the board for Black females in the scene, but Black women, LGBTQIA plus members, that's a whole nother category. So supporting one another is huge. Networking is even bigger. Stop by a stream with the tag. Go say hello. Network. I think that, the more that we come together in general, the better our chances are to be heard, because the thoughts will be collective. And as we said, sometimes, one person is pulled for the masses. And if that one person that is pulled actually understands the masses, we have a better chance of actually succeeding. Well, ladies, it has been a pleasure having you guys tonight. And I hope you had a wonderful time on the panel. Thank you guys so much for partaking in DigiPride. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Yeah.
To our audience, this has been a wonderful event, and I hope you've all had nothing but a great time here. But we hope that you learned something, and that you dive further into the conversation that we have had tonight. This Juneteenth panel talk has been part of Gayming Magazine's annual DigiPride celebrations. This DigiPride was presented by JAMA Games and sponsored by Devolver Digital and Wizards of the Coast. To find out what is still to come, because the job is never finished, head over to gamingmagazine.com/DigiPride and have a wonderful, wonderful night.
Bye.